this is where I wanted to talk about too. Of course, the whole Batman not using a gun situation. Of course, that's always a topic of conversation. Batman killing, and then of course, Batman even touching a gun. So Zack says right here, Zack Snyder. That's right, Zack Snyder. We got some good Zack Snyder stuff, and yes, he posted, well, when it comes to Zack, he was posting all kinds of things yesterday. All of a sudden, Zack is just like part of this immerse.com. Again, you got those crazies that I'm just like going, stop it, stop it, stop it. You're just embarrassing the fandom, as you guys do almost at a daily basis. They're like, oh, that's the reason why James Gunn posted the crypto and Superman. I've seen it. I've seen the tweets. They thought like, oh, the reason why James Gunn posted that was because Zack was posting this stuff. And I'm going, again, you're embarrassing yourself. Stop it. Just stop. You could still enjoy and post everything about the Snyderverse when it comes to DC, but when you start making those kind of claims, it's embarrassing. So first off, it started off right here. I'm excited to share something cool I've been working on for the past few months. Welcome to inverse.com's annual superhero issue, guest edited by me. Check out the entire thing. So he posted that first, and then he said, from heavy metal to Watchmen, comic books made me the artist I am today. Read all about these stories and others that influenced his career, of course, in my editor's letter for inverse.com. And then this one right here, we're going to dive into this one a little bit right here, but Frank Miller is both an inspiration to me and a kindred spirit. For inverse.com's superhero issue, I interviewed him about his career and his approach to making art. We go pretty deep in this conversation, and I think you'll enjoy it. Frank Miller and Zack Snyder talk comics, mythology, and breaking superhero canon. So Zack Snyder, look, here's the thing. I was approached by Inverse to curate an issue of their online magazine, and they were like, what do you want to talk about in comic books? The first thing I said, I want to talk about sex, baby. I want to talk about you and me. Sorry. And they were like, Jesus, okay, well. And then I said, okay, but you know what I'm saying. If I said to my father, like, oh, I want to work in comic books, he'd be like, oh, that's cute. You're going to work with children. But my perception of comic books is that, and it's partly your fault, Frank, I perceive comic books as one of the most complete storytelling formats where the artist, with words and pictures, can describe the human condition in the most complicated and beautiful way. And so I told him, look, I want to explore the perception of comic books as an adult medium with adult themes, real struggles, and psychologically complex characters that are fully formed in their morality or lack thereof, and really hold up the mirror to us as society. So anyway, they were like, okay, that all sounds cool. How are you going to do that? And I said, well, we'll write a series of articles, and maybe I'll interview Frank Miller, because I feel like Frank is a Rosetta Stone for the evolution that underwent in my life, where I found his work, well, first of all, like a kindred spirit, but also he told a truth that I believed about myth and complex characters and deconstructed the hero in a way that I could really relate to. And it's good. And they even talk about, bringing Batman back, with the Dark Knight Returns and bringing him back, because obviously Frank Miller right here, the notorious old TV show, the one with Adam West and Burt Ward, I mean, that was a goof. It was basically a snide take on stuff that I remember that I absolutely loved. I loved the comic book characters, and the TV show was constantly telling you how stupid the comic book was. Zack says, yeah, because it was a counterculture against authority, and they sort of saw Batman as the man. And so I just felt like they were making the man out to be sort of an idiot. Yeah. So without question, I was rejecting that damn show more than anything when I did Dark Knight Returns. You were like, literally, this is opposite. This is the opposite. The guy is the opposite of what you think he is. Frank said, yeah, this guy is no joke. This is where I wanted to talk about too. Of course, the whole Batman not using a gun situation. And of course, that's always a topic of conversation, Batman killing, and then of course, Batman even touching a gun. So Zack says right here, yeah, that's cool for me. If someone says in a hero's canon, he's not allowed to do blank, I immediately want him to do that thing because I feel like if a character can't withstand breaking his own canon, then he's not really worth anything, you know? And this is something that Zack, of course, talked about on Rogan. Frank Miller said, right. And then what defines him? I mean, at first, Zack, I approached this kind of thing almost like just a rebellious adolescent. I was told Batman could never fire a gun. I was told by the editor with absolute conviction. So I came up with an excuse for him to fire a rifle, even though it was just a grappling hook into the side of a building, but it was just to get the picture of him holding it. I don't like this absolute dicta. Zack said, well, it's cool because if you can create a scenario where Batman has to shoot a gun and someone says, well, Batman can't shoot a gun, and you're like, well, what should he do in this scenario then? And then if someone says, well, don't put him in the scenario, I'm like, well, that's a weak character. You can't have a character where we're modifying his scenario because he can't exist in it. It's not realistic. Now we're creating scenarios that his morality can work inside of rather than the other way around. Absolutely right, Zack. That's not creative. And I think that's what The Dark Knight did for me. I was like, oh wait, Batman can actually live in my world, which I think was cool. Batman can't shoot somebody dead. He cannot murder, but he can completely... But that's completely different issue than usually essentially a tool. So there you go. And that's just something that Zack said on Joe Rogan, which totally made sense. Like, okay, put him in the scenario. And again, and that's what I love about Zack, and that's what I love about anybody who's creating. And I'm hoping that James Gunn does something like that too. And then I love again, even going back to the crypto thing, it's like, oh no, maybe. And I'm kind of wondering too, if they're like, oh, I'm going to have crypto in it. Well, crypto has to look like this and he has to have a cape. And James Gunn's like, no, well, what if crypto was, what if he was like a rescue dog and he was very shaggy and he didn't look like the prim and proper crypto, like, ta-da, like that kind of dog. So then I was kind of like, looking at both little situations like, oh yeah, you got to let these creatives kind of inject some real world into all this cape shit,